Well, hello everybody and welcome. Thanks for showing up today to the App Attitude, Choosing the Best App for Your Conference or Event. I am Brant Kruger, the Director of Video and Production Technology for metroConnections. Joining me today is Brad Newman, the Director of Attendee Source Technologies for metroConnections. Before we get going, Brad's going to give us a little bit about the scope and what we're going to be talking about today in today's webinar.
Well, hi everybody. First, I'll start with a quick agenda, and basically what you can expect today is we're initially going to go through the different types of apps that are out there for you. Then we're going to discuss the factors, some of the determining factors in how you choose which app works for your particular needs. Finally, we'll open it up to some Q&A and give some examples towards the end of different scenarios that we'll use in those Q&A area. Quick disclaimer, I want to just be clear that we're talking about the general landscape of conference and event apps today. We're not talking about apps as a whole outside of our industry. And we're also not talking about any particular product. Some products that you may have seen already in your searches may have a feature or two, or may not have a feature or two of some of the things that we're going to describe when we define these different apps. But just know that in general, this is what you can expect from the different types of apps we will describe. So with that, we're going to jump right in, and we're going to do a little bit two quick polling questions.
Yeah, that's right. And this is just to help establish a little bit of a baseline for where you guys are at with your conference apps. So the first question that we have for you is, are you currently using an app for your conference of events? Yes, no, or not sure. We'll let some of the responses come in. So far we've got almost 50 people online, and we'll give everybody a chance to weigh in here. And it looks like we've got almost everybody. We'll start bringing up the results. And so far as they're coming in, it's looking like the vast majority of you are not currently using an app for your conference of events. Interesting. Okay. So the next thing that we want to ask you guys is, do you have plans to or continue to start using an app for your conference or event? You have plans to continue to use or start using an app for your conference or event. So maybe you're actively looking, you're in the market for it, you want to figure out if this is the right thing for you. Results are coming in. And again, it looks like the majority of you are yes and a maybe. Okay. So you're thinking about it, toying with the idea, or you're definitely going to do it. And very few of you are actually not actively thinking about doing it. Okay, great.
So what we're going to discuss next are the four different platform type options for the mobile apps. Now, the first one we're going to talk about is what we consider a basic web app. And we'll go through these in order, or as we move through, we'll go through each one of these. But the four are a web basic, web enhanced, a hybrid, which is a combination of native and web enhanced, and then native, of course. So we'll go through the first one here with web basic. So the first thing to note is that with a web app, you're actually using whatever device you're using, whether it's an iPhone or an Android tablet or your computer for that sake. You're viewing all of the conference information in the browser. The app basically plays inside the browser itself. They're formatted for the mobile devices, and when we talk about the basic web apps, generally we're talking about ones that are part of an existing registration system. Generally, the only real functionality you get is personalized agendas from that, and a little bit of some content pages.
So, Brad, would it be fair to say that even though a lot of people call it a web app, it's actually just a web page?
Well, in this case, there is an application portion of it, because there is the ability for the attendee to interact with their sessions. They can rate their sessions, and usually there's a survey involved as well. So it is an application. It just happens to run inside the browser.
Exclusively in the browser. Okay.
Correct. All right, so Web Enhanced. Now this is something that's relatively new, and what's happened here is that apps can now use what's called HTML5, and I'm sure that we're going to discuss that in just a second because I know Brant has a question about it. But it also allows for you to be able to store information on your device and have offline access. Some of the advanced features that are available, really the big one that's on everybody's mind right now is that we are hearing about is polling during sessions, so live polling and putting those results up on the screen. A lot of folks used to use the handheld keypads to do audience response. Well, this allows for people to use their own devices that they bring into the room to be able to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, my question is that HTML5 is something that it's a term that gets thrown about quite a bit, especially by app manufacturers and things like that. I mean, what does that mean? What does HTML5 mean?
Yeah, great question. So the deal with HTML5 is this: when you have any application that you've ever used and a new feature comes out and there's just a release number after it, really that's what they did when they named it HTML5. The reason it's talked about so much is because it brought in a standard set of rules and the way the different browsers render all of that content. So it looks the same on no matter what browser you're using, whether it's on your desktop or on your phone. So the big key for HTML5, although the 5 is there, the really important part is the features that got added to this latest version of the application known as HTML5.
So it's the most current, most advanced method of delivering web pages to you.
Correct, and it gives the developers the most opportunity to do new and cool things. And the biggest one when we talk about web apps for the enhanced version is the offline access.
Okay.
So we're going to jump over now to the next one, and that is the native app. A lot of you have your smartphones and have downloaded apps from the stores. So the entire app gets downloaded to the device from whatever app store you use, whether it be Apple's App Store, the Google Play, or the BlackBerry Store. So all of that content at the time of download is put onto your phone and you don't use your web browser at all. It's developed, the key here is that you have to develop one for each of the operating systems. So if you're doing an app for an event, you need to, knowing your audience, there's at least the need for the Android and the Apple iOS app, and possibly the BlackBerry app as well. And if Windows Phone takes off, then there'll be even another one. So it's one of the things you need to be aware of is that you're building actually 4 different apps that have to go through 4 different approval processes. We'll talk more about that in a little while. The one thing about native apps that it does give you, because you're downloading it to your phone, is the ability to have a little bit richer of a user interface. And by that I mean that you can use a little bit higher resolution graphics because, again, once it's downloaded to the phone, it's saved there, and you're not going through the web browser to use it.
So it sounds like the key to the native app is the fact that the whole thing gets downloaded to your phone, just like as if you were downloading Angry Birds or something like that. The whole application.
Perfect example. If you download Angry Birds, you could be on an airplane and play that game entirely offline. Same idea for the native apps for the conference and event.
All right.
So we went a little bit out of order, but we wanted to get through the native story before we talked about the hybrid, because what a hybrid app is a native shell, so that you're downloading part of it as an app, and then inside of that, it's got its own custom browser that it renders all your information in. So if you think about it, you still have to go through the device app store process, and so you still have to build it for multiple operating systems. You can play most of it offline, and there is the ability to use some of the device features like with the native app, and we'll talk more about that as we go through the feature sets.
Now this one was a hard one for me to wrap my head around, and so I think the easiest way to describe it is that you're downloading company ABC's app, not a specific app for your event. So you've got this shell that then contains all the information for your event. Does that pretty much sum it up?
That does, and what generally happens with these apps is you go to the store, and you go, and if ABC Company built the app, you search for ABC Company, not the conference name, which can be confusing for attendees. So there's some give and take with all of these, and we're going to go through what factors we think are important in making your final decision. And by the way, we also feel that there is a reason for each of these to be used at some point and for different types of meetings. So we're going to go through some of those now. So factors to consider. The first one that everyone talks about is Wi-Fi or data connections. So is there an offline mode? So we talked a little bit about the Web Basic being usually connected to a registration system. Very little of that can actually be displayed offline. If your particular device happens to cache that page, you may be able to get back to it, you may not. Not a great offline option. Web Enhanced, Hybrid, and Native all do have an offline option at least, and then we're going to talk about the stability of each of these next. So again, very limited offline stability for the web. Web Enhanced and Hybrid are both good. Now remember, for both Web Enhanced and Hybrid, the content that your attendees are seeing, so their personal agendas, their welcome letter, all of that is actually playing in a web browser. Even though the Hybrid app has a shell around it, the actual content still plays within the browser. And then, of course, Native, because it's completely downloaded, has complete offline stability.
So these are going to be key things to think about in your planning process. What is the access to the Internet going to be at the location that I'm at? And how much information am I going to need to push during that meeting? So that's where you're going to have to weigh these options as to which one you might want to steer towards.
Absolutely. All right. Overall user experience. So this is from the attendee perspective. Performance speed, not surprising that the Web Basic is the slowest. However, assuming that you do your due diligence and you have the proper speeds that you need in a conference center, it's still slower than the rest. So I'm going to compare them to each other at this point. Web Enhanced and Hybrid are both moderate. So basically they have to, they go to the server to get information less times than the Native does, and the Web Basic has to go get information on every click that you make. Just like you were sitting on your home computer on a website going from page to page, it's going to go grab that page every time you click. The file size and download time. So this is opposite, and that is that the Web and Basic uses up very little of your memory on your phone. It's very small, very fast. The Web Enhanced is also very small and fast, just with some added technology of the offline modes. The Hybrid is moderate. Again, if I click on something that I haven't clicked on before and it's content related, it's going to need to go get that from the server. And then large and slow for the Native, meaning that the initial download time can be really large depending on how big the graphics are. You know that if you're on your regular 3G speed and you're downloading Angry Birds, it can take a while, whereas the other stuff can download much faster. It's smaller.
Yeah, right. So again, you're talking about kind of the initial setup.
Initial setup.
An initial download to get the information onto your phone can be quite large, not necessarily updates to the agenda or anything like that.
Well, yeah, you see that once you get it on your phone, the performance speed is the fastest of them in the Native app.
Right.
Access to device features. So we talked a little bit about HTML5 and the Hybrid being able to use some of that. So if we look at this, it's very limited in Web Basic and Web Enhanced. And what we mean by device features is being able to save files to a file folder on your phone where you want it. Being able to use the camera inside the application. Those types of things. As far as the hybrid and native, those things are much more available. Now, do all hybrid and all native use all the device features? No, but they have the ability to. So that's something to discuss with your vendor or your partner when you're trying to make a decision on which one you want to use. If you want to definitely have them to be able to download their presentations and store them the way they want to be able to store them, then you might want to look at the hybrid and native options and do away with the others at that point. Anything?
Well, yeah, so I mean, as I'm plugging along here as an attendee, if I want to save the PDF of a bio of a certain speaker, what we're saying is that on the web and web-enhanced versions, that's going to go right to your downloads folder on your phone. You're not going to be able to spin that off the Dropbox or anything like that unless that's part of your browser function. But on hybrid and native apps, it's full hooks. They're full hooks into your phone, being able to use all of the technology that's on your phone, including, the gyroscopes and the GPS and the microphones and the cameras. So they would be capable of being able to hook themselves into those things if the developer chooses to do so.
Correct. And the last statement I'll make about this is that Web Enhanced is coming closer and closer to being able to use a lot of these features. So, the differences are narrowing, so it's really depending on, it may come down to things outside some of those types of features.
So, Brad, we have a question coming in from Karen Knox, and maybe you're going to address this later, but she's talking about updates to the event with the native apps, and she's talking content, I'm sure, that do the attendees need to download each time an update is made to the event information, for example, a change in agenda?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if it's content-related changes, all of the native app companies have an administrative user interface that's web-based, so that me as the administrator of the meeting can go log on and make a change to the agenda, and it will push that change immediately. You don't have to go through the App Store, and there is no download for the attendees. It will automatically change the next time they go to that page.
Right. It's using a very small amount of internet traffic as opposed to completely re-downloading the whole app.
Correct, but that brings up a good point, and that is that with any of these, we talk about, it can be all offline mode with native and hybrid. We're going to talk about some other technologies in a second here, but there are portions of any technology that you use that are going to need small bits and pieces of internet traffic to get the updates to them. So in this example, Karen, if I was completely offline and I was up on an airplane, I wouldn't get that new agenda item until I got a connection again. So just things to keep in mind about, you can't totally do away with internet access if you're using a native app. It doesn't work that way.
It'll give you a basic level once it's downloaded, but then if there are any updates or anything, that would have to be pushed out via the internet.
Yep.
And actually, this rolls right into it. The maintenance and update.
Sure.
So if there's a change in agenda or something like that, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Brad, but then you're going to be able to push those out very easily to a native or native app, hybrid app, web, all of them basically. But if there is a change in features, that's going to be
the big one. So if there's a change in the features, or if you add a functionality to the app, that is going to trigger the update from the App Store. So although for both hybrid and native, those types of updates get pushed through the stores pretty quickly, you're still, as an attendee, going to get a notification that there's a newer release out. And that's just like go back to the Angry Birds example, when they put out new puzzles, then you're told you need to go down, download an update for the app. So those are the kinds of things that'll force you into the maintenance. So both web versions of apps are much easier and less difficult to do any type of update, whereas both the hybrid and the native, you get into more difficult if you're actually changing, the structure of your application. So if you decide to add a gamification, which is a whole nother webinar in and of itself, if you decided to do that at the last minute and the app was already through the store, then that would be an update type of functionality.
Well, I think another important thing to point out in that is that goes for bug fixes as well. So if there is a problem with your app, that is not a content-related issue. It's not just somebody wrote down the wrong meeting room, but there's actually a bug in your app. That has to go through an Apple's approval process before it can be pushed, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and that's a great point. We really encourage people to vet these different applications that they're using and have an experience on the app doing exactly what you're going to need it before you actually deploy it to your conference or event.
All right. Well, I think we've covered that. Why don't we move on to some of the other features that are available?
Yeah. So the first one is the different notification technologies, and the term push notification gets used a lot. What I want to share with you is the fact that both Web Basic and Web Enhanced can allow you to quote-unquote push out alerts, but that's different than a push notification, and here's how they're different. An alert is seen by an attendee if they're on the app. So they are actively using the app, or the next time they open the app, they will get to see that alert. For true push notifications, what happens is the application uses your device feature of what many of you know as push notifications for your emails, so that when you get a new notification, you are notified via the little icon with the little 1 or 2 that notifies you that there's something that you should go look at in your application. So you don't have to be actively using it in order to get those push notifications.
So Web and Web Enhanced, I have to have it open in order to see the alert, and the other ones I'll get that little pop-up up in the upper corner, upper side of my phone.
Yeah. Now the downside of push alerts, or the thing that you want to be careful about with true push technology, is how often you actually send out notifications.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question: is can I turn it off? Can I tell it I don't want these push notifications? I want to turn it off.
Yeah, and some of the applications allow for that, and others don't. So you want to be careful, and you want to ask those questions. At the attendee level, can they choose to turn off the push notifications at any time?
So that sounds like something that's more of a question for the planner. I've been an attendee at an event where I couldn't turn off the push notifications. They didn't allow me to do that. But what happened is that I was getting alerts then for things that, or fairly frequently for things that were obvious to me. So for this particular event, it was so-and-so's taking the stage. And I would look at it and I would say, I know, I'm sitting in the room. I can see that they're taking the stage. Thank you. So I think it starts to get into a question more for the planner of if you aren't going to let your attendees turn off those push notifications because you want to make sure you can reach them at any moment, not to abuse that power. That with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, and what you can see happen in the case that you do overuse it is that people will uninstall the app on their phones.
I did at the event,
yeah.
At the event that I was at. I couldn't take it anymore because they were using it like Twitter and instead of an actual application.
Yeah. All right, so hopefully that defines the push versus alerts. We'll move on to the...
Yeah, and as always, if you guys have any questions at any time, go ahead and punch it into the chat, and I'll interrupt it and interrupt Brad, and we'll get to your questions.
I mentioned the hot topic of live polling and live surveying, and being able to use that with the device that people bring into the room. And so it quite simply looks just like it says in Web Basic. Although they may be able to rate their sessions in Web Basic, it's not a live polling situation where you're just going to have to give the planner or whoever owns the meeting a report at the end of how they chose to rank or rate that particular session. Whereas for all three of the Web Enhanced, Hybrid, and Native, there actually is the functionality and live reporting so that you can have a screen up, and as people answer the survey questions, much like we did early in the process here, where you could see people adding to our polling questions, it's live up on a screen. And one of the things that makes that available is the newest web technologies that are out there.
Well, and I think that would be a great opportunity to actually find out, do people currently use live polling at their conferences or events?
All right, well, let's find out.
I'll throw this poll out there. It's something that, I don't know, it feels to me on meetings, it's getting to be the point where it's almost 50-50. That almost half of the meetings that I'm...
And if we look at the responses, it is almost 50-50.
Yeah, it's pretty much dead. I'll bring you the results up so everybody can see. It is almost dead on 50-50, and I think that's an interesting trend that we're starting to see more and more people really wanting that interaction, really wanting the ability to get instant feedback on the stuff that they're talking about.
The other cool thing that this can be used for is for the Q&A type of answers. So you can, a speaker could put up or on the app inside their session have a question that just says, please send in your questions, and when we get to the Q&A, I'll be able to go through them or put them up on the screen. So it can be used for both, polling and or collection of content. All right, so inside our community involvement, we're going to talk about two items, the social media aspect and attendee networking. So social media, you'll see that they are checked off as yellow, which means they have marginal effectiveness for both the Web Basic and Web Enhanced. And what we mean by that is you can embed all of these different social sites. You can have a Twitter feed that they can view inside the application, but if they want to actually send a tweet, it will take them to their Twitter account on their phone, versus the hybrid and native have the ability for them to stay inside the app and actually send a tweet from there without ever leaving the application. So again, Web Basic and Web Enhanced, you can see the feed. If you click, I want to tweet, it will actually take you to your Twitter account. Attendee networking, and what we mean by this is the ability to interact directly with other attendees. The Web Basic, the ones connected to the registration systems, not so much. The Web Enhanced and all the way through native, all of them have the ability to use some type of either chat feature or instant messaging feature or emailing feature back and forth between each other. Justin?
No, we've got a couple questions that came in actually regarding the polling. So let's just hop back for that for just a second. And the questions, both Lori and Jacob kind of want to know, do the polling questions have to be pre-populated, or can they be added on the fly?
Yeah, and we actually, it brings up a bigger topic, and that is the servicing of any of these apps. And I guess this is as good a time to talk about it as any, and that is that almost as much effort and energy needs to be put into running this app from the administrative side as any other marketing project that you would be doing. And one of the areas would be that you could, in fact, have someone sitting next to the speaker, and the speaker could go, hey, I want to put up a poll, and tell you what that is, and you could do that on the fly. There is a servicing aspect to making that happen. You also could preload them, but it is available to do it on the fly.
Yeah, I think a lot of these questions, unfortunately, need to be answered by the particular app developer. That it's going to be determined by their own capabilities and whether or not you're buying into a service that does provide someone on site. I mean, there are an awful lot of these apps out there, whether they're just meeting and agenda apps or registration sites and things like that. And if any of you have had anything to do with those, you know there are a bunch that are just straight out of the box. You pay a certain amount of money, or maybe it's even free, and you can go punch in all your information. But if that information needs to change or something like that, then yeah, now you're into a service question. So whether or not your app provider, whether or not your app developer is providing you that capability is a great question for them when you're in the vetting process.
Or even just to add on to that, your conference partner. So anyone, if you're using a third-party network or team to help service your event, that's something that they may be involved in as well. I saw a question come in.
Yeah, Martha's asking, how secure is the content and information?
Yeah, all of these different apps are that we have vetted are secure to the level of any registration system out there being PCI Level 1 compliant and those types of things. The reason for that is quite simple. They wouldn't be able to stay in business if they weren't, because this would be, you don't have control of the surroundings when you're at a conference. So these are probably more secure than your average, app that's on your computer, because the developers know that they don't have control of the network that people are accessing it from and things like that. So they're very secure, and we have documentation on those if anyone wants to talk further about that.
Yeah, you should always be able to ask your developer, what kind of encryption are you using and that kind of stuff. We have just a few more slides, so why don't we go through those, and we'll keep an eye on the chat for questions, but we might want to hold some of it till the end. So why don't we finish out what we've got through, and then we'll see where we're at with questions.
So development time, and this is a big one, especially, for me, I've been in this industry for 17 years, and I know that development time can be an issue with anything related to a conference. So a lot of last-minute things come up. What we're trying to do is educate you today on the approximations of the different development times. So for Web Basic, it's moderate to fast, because the Web Basic tools are within a registration system. There has to be some type of workarounds at times. The enhanced are fast. The moderate or the hybrids are moderate in terms of development time, and obviously for those of you that have ever dealt with a native app, it's much slower, and a big chunk of that slowness is that it has to go through the approval process. So this leads into the App Store approval, and that is that the Web Basic and Web Enhanced have no approval needs, and then you look at both the hybrid and native, both have that. So that if you get into this 2 months ahead of time and you start a community up on your site and then you decide you want to start adding stuff to it, and it's a hybrid or native, again, it's going to have to go through that approval process, and then the folks that have already downloaded it will need to download the latest version of it. So things to keep in mind, time to market. If you get a last-minute item, you can probably rest assured that you're going to be looking at the left side of just getting something that can get the attendees the basic needs met.
Well, and I think this is another opportunity to push your app developer on how quick is that turnaround for changes. That on both the Web Basic and Web Enhanced versions, the theoretical turnaround time is very fast. I mean, literally, if you're sitting there next to someone, you can go quick, make changes to that web page, and as soon as the person refreshes, it's up. But does that person exist? Are you able to make a phone call and say, hey, I need this change, and how quick can they turn that around?
Again, your servicing partners are the key to taking care of these types of items for you.
Yeah, this is all the theoretical turnaround time.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily based in reality. So it's further questions that you need to press when you're doing your research.
All right. Overall cost. Now this is a comparison to each other, and this again is the generalization across meeting and conference applications. So the Web Basic is generally very low cost. The Web Enhanced is at a lower price point than both the hybrid and, of course, the native is the most. One of the things to keep in mind is if you have somebody in your company that says we should do a native app, you should really press for, okay, what types of features do you want to get out of that native app? Because we could be more fiscally responsible on either a hybrid or Web Enhanced. Now, obviously, if they have good reasons for it, that's the way to go. If they don't, then maybe the discussion goes towards the hybrid or Web Enhanced. Development time affects the cost, and then the expense of the custom features that you can get in both the hybrid and native are the reasons for the higher costs. Design elements. So custom design. So what we're talking about here is the structure of the application itself. So whether it's a menu that has icons on the left and it goes across the page, or it has icons that are on different parts of the website or the application. So the Web Basic is usually very limited. It is what it is, and if you want to use it, it's going to look like this menu. You can change the colors, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but it's going to look like this. So the Web Enhanced has many different versions, and the hybrid and, of course, native have the most design opportunities. And then, go ahead, next. When we talk about the graphics capability, which ties into the design, again, it's limited in the basic. You want the folks that have written these applications want to keep it small so their application is fast when it's on site. Web Enhanced is a little bit more moderate, along with Hybrid, and then of course the native, because remember the native, all of those images and artwork are downloaded onto your phone. The native app never has to go back to the web, to a web address to gather that information anymore. So that's why it can have the true high resolution HD type image work, even 3D if that was something you wanted.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like your standard web page versus a fully downloadable app. Your web page can only do so much versus the newer HTML5 web pages can do some pretty amazing, incredible things. But you're always going to have greater capabilities through that fully downloadable native app, like a Photoshop or something like that. You know, yeah, you can go online and use a little basic photo editor online, but you're always going to have bigger, badder capabilities coming out of that fully native app.
Correct.
Someone did ask what's the difference between the yellow check mark and the green check mark. It just means it's kind of a good, better, best. That it's capable but limited would be your yellow.
Yep.
So it can do it, but it might be limited. The green check marks means it can pretty much, the sky's the limit. You can do what you need to do.
And the other way that's being shown is that the green is that basically all of the hybrid apps, or virtually all of the hybrid apps, have that available, whereas for Web Enhanced, some of them have this capability where others may or may not. So, yes, that's a good example.
Yeah, it might be capable of it, but the
we don't see it all the time.
Okay.
Yep.
Hope that helps.
We're going to talk about knowing your audience. So, if you're doing events that you've done multiple times, you know your audience. You know they all have the latest devices, and they want native. You know, it makes your choice relatively easy to go either hybrid or native. But if you have the novice mobile users, you want to really be careful with how much you give them, especially if it's the first year you're deploying it. One of the things we recommend all the time is that, okay, this is your first year. You don't need to hit a grand slam on opening day. Let's just get on base and let's use some of the features that are available for the attendees. And what is the reason we're using this? Well, if it's to get rid of paper, okay, well, perfect. We can go any of the four can handle that, and we can get them their personal agendas, and we can get them the information they need regarding the conference. And then get some feedback on it, do a survey within the app, and get that information, and you can get better and better and add more and more as you go.
This is another situation where I've seen people start to unload the app because they loaded it up thinking that they'd be able to get the agenda and all that kind of stuff. They open it up and they're just blasted with 500 different features and options of the game that we're going to play and the Twitter feed and all these kinds of things, when all they want to do is just find the map to get to their next breakout session. So I think it's an important point to say that really take into account your audience and make sure that if you need to, you're taking those baby steps and getting the information that's most important right up front and easy to find.
So again, if you're looking at the different colored check marks, we sort of feel that the Web Basic will work well for novice users, but not all of the Web Basic options that are out there are even really good for novice users because they're hard to work with. So really it falls into the middle here where both Web Enhanced and Hybrid give you enough features and enough choices that you can make good choices, remain fiscally responsible, and get the attendees the things that they want.
And I think that's why I would agree with the caution check mark on the native, is that, again, because it has the capabilities of hooking in so much with your phone, unfortunately, sometimes people might make the mistake of trying to throw too much at it, have it do too many things all at the same time, and maybe some or all of it might not work very well.
Yeah. Go ahead. So these are all the things that your app could have. Well, you guys take a look at this list. I just want to say a couple of things, and that is that the overall landscape of applications for conferences and events is there's a lot out there. There's a lot of choices. Some of it's good, some of it's not as good. Some of it, people are in it just to make a little bit of money and get out. Others are in there for the long haul. What's happening is, and I think you could see this in the check marks that we showed, is a lot of the different types of apps and the apps that are out there are now coming up with similar functionality. So it's not always the actual functionality that will determine which app company you end up going with. One of the big influences that we look at is the administrative interfaces that are available and how much of it can we control. You know, like I said, I've been in this business a long time, and I won't speak for anybody else, but I like to have control of my data, and I like to have control of making changes when I want to make them. So for me, when I look at these apps, yes, great, you can show me that it does push notifications, and yes, it does personal agendas, and it does all these cool things. But from the services aspect of this, how much of this do I get to handle, and how much of it do I have to rely on you guys to, you know, as the technology provider to handle? So that's a big thing to think about when you're looking at the different or deploying a new app or your first app.
I think this is probably as good a time as any to talk about something that I was at a conference recently and talking with some mobile app people and with some event planners. And I got the sense that there was starting to be feature fatigue, that everyone is racing out there. There's so many of these apps in the space. I mean, you look at this list and your eyes just start to glaze over, that these are all the things that your app is capable of having. So what can be the differentiator? What's going to be the thing that, okay, I have this, you have this, I have this, you have this. Is it really about checking boxes, or is there some other X factor that's going to get you past that kind of feature fatigue?
Yeah, and I think that, like I was just saying, I think that a lot of that has to do with those that come out with the interface for the administrators to be able to manage that process in a more efficient way. You know, give me the opportunity to do everything I needed to do without having to go back to the actual application developers.
Okay, so I mean, it seems to keep circling back to just that level of service. That you know who you can deal with, you can get access to your data, you can get your changes in and out, and it's as seamless and effortless as possible.
Well, let me try to give you an example or something to compare it to. One of the challenges that's being discussed in reg systems in general out there is who's going to come up with an interface so that I don't need to have a laptop on site. I can run all the reports I need. I can make changes and do everything I can right from my iPad. Well, it's, you know, although there's a couple that have tried, there's nothing that is solid for the administrators. And it's the same thing here. Who's going to create the interface that works the best for me as a meeting planner? I don't have to be technical. I don't have to, you know how it does what it does, but I need to be able to make changes to my attendees and to my, you know, general content of my event. That's where the race is.
There's a couple people that have their hands raised. Just so you know, in order to do that feature, we have to know exactly who's attached to which phone number. So the best way to get your questions in, if you have a question, is to go ahead and use the chat feature.
Unmute them.
That's what I mean. So,
yeah.
Unfortunately, the way that ReadyTalk handles the actual verbal questions is via phone number. So rather than having you guys give out your phone numbers to everybody, just go ahead and use the chat feature.
All right, so what are the next steps? Well, you know, I mentioned earlier, with any marketing project, you really want to really narrow down and what are the goals of this product. Is it to, you know, to get rid of the paper? Is it to be green? Is it to give a better user experience to your attendees so that they're not flipping through a book trying to find their session or a map trying to find their session? Decide what the features are that we need. Do I need GPS? Is it a citywide event where I want somebody to be able to be in the app and be able to go from one hotel to another hotel without leaving the app? A big one here that usually gets left till the end of the planning process, and if you are thinking about putting, you know, you're deploying an app it probably needs to be moved up the list, and that is determining the budget for the app. It needs to be part of that discussion of the overall user experience, and then looking at, okay, how much are we saving on not printing, and how much do we have for the overall budget of the application. And then, to be honest, consult with the experts. I know a lot of people go to trade shows and they talk, like Brant was saying earlier, he went and he talked directly to some of the application providers, and that's great. I think that you get to hear from them, what their features are, they'll answer your security questions, they'll do all of that. But consulting with experts that have used these different apps, that have had experience with the back-end administrative interface, finding out from the experts what types of integrations these different systems have in terms of, well, I use ABC Reg, do they do it? Do they integrate with it? A lot of them do. So you need to have the experts help you with asking those questions and getting good answers that you are comfortable with making your decision moving forward.
All right, great. Before we slide into the question and answer phase, I just want to give you the 30-second pitch on metroConnections. We want to thank you again for showing up here. We really appreciate it, and it is our pleasure to have these webinars, and we hope that they're going to be beneficial to everybody. metroConnections, we have the 4 major service centers as part of our company. We emphasize these 4 as far as our conference services. We're going to have all of your registration needs, name badges, all of the pre-show, on-site, all of that kind of stuff that's going on, all helping with your conference management. We've got the production department. The production is going to be your meeting, your actual in the meeting room. We can handle your lights and your sound and your AV and all of the scheduling of getting the gear in and out and all of that kind of stuff. Our event side, very near and dear to my heart, is where I started with the company. All of your special event needs, so that's going on after you've had your meeting. You want to throw that bash for all of your salespeople that night and really wow them. And then where the company started, our transportation department, all of the ability to get your people to and from your meetings, to and from their hotels. So that really is a 30-second overview. We encourage you to stop by metroConnections.com to look at all of the services that we do have available. And with that, we're going to throw that open to the Q&A. We had one that came in earlier.
Well, before you do that, Brant, there's a couple of questions about getting a copy of the presentation, and we are putting together for everyone that registered for it a PDF version of this and some documentation that we will be sending you, and we'll follow up with that. So yes, you will be getting a copy of all these slides.
Yeah, and they'll be available here. The recording of the webinar will be available here on Ready Talk as well via the link. The question that came in earlier was about development time, and what is the approximate development time for each of these? We kind of had the generalities of low, medium, and high, but ballpark, understanding that every app's different depending on how much customization you have.
Yeah, so if we start with the first one, which is the Web Basic, if you're using a Red system, you generally can put up something in a day or two of getting the information that you want up on the site, because it's already part of it's reading from the same database. The Web Enhanced, I'll just give you an example that we generally have a 10 business day turnaround. Now that generally doesn't take nearly that long, but you can say from start to finish, when we start collecting data to actually being live on it, is under 10 days. Hybrid, you can look at, now a lot of the hybrids are what's called do-it-yourself, and Brant mentioned those earlier, where you can simply go sign up for it, put your event on, and it's kind of a shared model where you don't get the branding. They have to go type in ABC app in order to download the app, and then once they download the app, they search for your event within this big list of events. Those generally you can do pretty quickly because, again, it's already through the App Store. If you're talking about a custom hybrid, it's going to take almost the same timeline as a full native, and that is 4 to 7 weeks. Now, again, 2 to 3 weeks of that is really the Apple Store. Generally, both BlackBerry and even Windows and the Google Android Play Store is much faster than that. But if you go to one of these providers and you ask them, they're going to tell you, 4 to 6 to 7 weeks that you need to be ready to go. And remember, that's 4 to 6 weeks ahead of time that you need to know what you want on the application. I mentioned earlier I've been doing this a long time, and I know that that's not always the case. So if you're in a situation where you can't get answers to what folks really want on it, you may want to steer away from the native and move into the web enhanced so that you can meet the deadline and still give them a very good user experience.
Another question coming in from Patrice Wiggins. Are there factors to be considered when integrating your registration system with an event app?
Absolutely, and not all registration systems are created equally, and not all event apps are created equally when it comes to integration. Integration is a funny word. The way I define integration is that information and data from the attendees can be passed back and forth from either app. So in other words, there's a two-way connection. That is integration to me. So be careful and ask the question when you're discussing that, because a lot of people think integration is, oh, my reg system can pass data to the mobile app. Well, but what about all the information you're collecting on the mobile app? Do you want that back in your reg system or not? You may or may not, but you should have the ability to do that. And if changes are made on someone's phone, is that information, if I say I was going to go to session A and I end up in session B, I check into session B, do you want to know about that back in the reg system? So you want to really be careful with the word integration and know what it means to you, and ask that question of both your reg and your application developer or your conference partner.
Well, I think that pretty much sums it up. We've got some people that think they might know you from a while back, but otherwise, more. But otherwise, it looks like we've got all the questions answered. We've got a couple more minutes if anybody does have any more questions. We'd like to thank everybody again for coming. Once again, my name is Brant Kruger. I'm the Director of Video and Production Technology here at Metro. And Brad Newman is with me here. He is the Director of Attendee Source.
And you can grab our emails on the last screen here if you'd like. And thanks, everybody, for being on the call today. I hope you got something out of it.
If you're dialing in later remotely or you think of another question, feel free to email either one of us or give us a call. We're always open for answering your questions. Thanks, everybody. And we will email out a link to the comprehensive checklist and link for the recorded webinar. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you. Please stand by.